be recorded.
Meeting, I would like to call to order the Monmouth City Council meeting. First, ask to conduct our roll call, please. Councilor Carey.
If I can figure out, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilor Belts. Here. Councilor Lopez.
Here.
Councilor McKeel. But it's actually my speakers. All right, and for the flag salute, Councilor McKeel, since you're with us this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight, we have one item in the consent calendar that is the minutes of the meeting of February 15th. Unless there are additions or corrections, I would entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Oberst, for the motion.
Second.
And Councilor Belts for the second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. And any opposed? Not seeing any. We do have time set aside for public comments. This evening, we don't have anyone in person offering comments. So as usual, I will ask Bill Spolman if we had anyone submit comments last week online.
We had neither, Mayor Coons.
Great, thank you. I mean, not great. We love public comment. We welcome it all the time, but we don't have any. We'll just move right on. We have this evening 3 items on our business agenda. We have an item in our work session. At that time, then I will ask that we pause the meeting of the council and go to the Urban Renewal Agency Board meeting. We have some business to conduct there. And then I will ask to reconvene the council meeting so that we can go into executive session pursuant to ORS 192-660D to discuss labor negotiations. If that is okay with everybody, we'll continue on with our business agenda. So first item of business tonight, looks like we have OLCC renewals, and those come from our police department. And I see Mike Strack with us, so we'll turn it over.
Can you guys hear me okay? Perfect. Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, I've got the 2022 annual liquor license report. So as you know, the city has the option to make an annual recommendation to OLCC concerning the renewal of all our liquor licenses. And if we do not forth the recommendation, then OLCC can make plans to move forward without any input from us. Previously, the city has recommended approval for all liquor licenses for each of the businesses that are in the report. I have reviewed the police reports related to all the businesses, and there have been no violations of any OLCC rules, laws, or regulations from any of the businesses. I did make mention, however, of police reports related to one business, Jack's Pub. They didn't have any violations of OLCC laws or regulations, but they did have several police reports related to their business. Those reports ranged from trespass, emotionally disturbed persons, domestic disturbances, menacing and intimidations, criminal mischiefs, intoxicated persons, suspicious persons, and welfare checks and DUIs. We have the option of sending a recommendation in favor of approving all the establishments and send a recommendation in favor of approving certain establishments. And we also have the ability to send a recommendation against approving all or some establishments if we wish. And staff has a recommendation, but if you guys have any questions, I feel free to answer them.
Questions, Councillor McKeel, and then Councillor Lane Shetterly, our attorney, also has a comment.
Yeah, just, if I may, just to kind of set the stage. If you were to consider recommending denial of, to recommend denial of an application, before you take that action, we have to give the owner, the applicant, notice and an opportunity for a public hearing. So you can't make that recommendation tonight. You could elect to defer if you were thinking of doing that, but then we would have to put them on notice and schedule it for a hearing. You can also make no recommendation. That's another option. That doesn't require a hearing.
Thank you, Councillor
And
McKeel.
is that a change?
No,
Is that a change?
no. We've had OLCC hearings on proposed recommendations against it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good enough.
So I do have concerns with Jack's Pub. I noticed that there's other bars on the list that have not had the level of incident reports. I'm wondering if they are being responsible with selling drinks, because it's pretty easy to just keep selling drinks and not keep track of how intoxicated customers are getting. And is that a problem that you have seen with Jack's Pub?
So I haven't seen that like that problem in particular. So I think what the difference you're seeing is Rookies is a very established clientele of people that go there regularly all the time. Jack's Pub is very unique in the fact that you have locals that go there, plus that's the bar that all of the college students now mix with because there is no more Main Street pub. So you have a unique mix of people that go there. And I think that's what kind of causes some of the issues that we get responses from. I will say in Jack's favor that their staff has always been very quick to call us if there's anything that does arise, and they are very helpful in helping us with our investigations and trying to pinpoint what the reasons were. They also trespass people that are problem people that they can recognize. So I think they do take effort in trying to mitigate those problems. But again, you've got a lot of foot traffic right in that area, and sometimes there's probably a handful of calls that arise because people walking by will then get into tiffs with people that are at the bar. So I don't necessarily see it as a bar problem. By nature, they're going to have responses from the police. That's just what happens when you sell alcohol past a certain time frame. But they do call us and they help us out and try to rectify the problems.
So I guess my concern is that if you continue to serve alcohol to somebody that you can tell is starting to they've had too much to drink already, and then as soon as, now they've already reached the level that there's going to be a problem. Oh, sorry, I'm not used to this camera thing here. there's already a problem because they have served too much alcohol and so they're quick to call you, but they've already put themselves in a position because they should have stopped the person long ago.
Yeah,
Councilor
thank-
McKeel.
yeah, thanks. Just serving a visibly intoxicated person is a violation of liquor law. And I guess we've heard from our police department is that they don't have any incidences of serving a visibly intoxicated person. So that certainly would be a violation and a grounds on which you could make a recommendation not to approve. But from what I'm hearing, based on the investigation, we don't have any evidence of that.
Okay. Thank you for the definition there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And,
Yes,
and
we're over. Oh, go ahead, Sergeant.
Sorry. And to Councilor McKeel's point, we do, every time we go there, we actively investigate over serving and stuff like that. So if we're able to make an arrest on that, we most certainly do that. But it's something that is always investigated when we go there. It's just we haven't ever found the, probable cause to do so.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Councilor Overs?
So this almost sounds like a little bit of a catch-22. If they're serving alcohol, if not over-serving from the report, and some people, when they imbibe alcohol, get a little out of sorts, and they could delay calling, and then they wouldn't have a big list of reports. Or they could be very proactive about calling, and they would have a big list of reports. When we look at the big list of reports and we say they're not being responsible, when what they're doing is being very responsible by being quick to call for help. So when I first read this report, I was right there, you were, Carol, and I was concerned about over-serving. But it sounds like, at least in part, the reason we have all these issues of police response is because they're being proactive about asking for your help. So that's actually very encouraging to hear that.
Yeah, and I would agree with that.
There are questions?
Madam Mayor, to frame or end the discussion, I would move to send the OLCC a recommendation to renew all of the liquor licenses listed on this report.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilor Terry for the motion and Councilor McKeel for the second. Another opportunity for discussion or questions. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And any opposed? All right, thank you very much. And thank you, Sergeant Strack, for the investigation and the explanation. And thank you, Lane, for that as well.
Thank you.
It does seem a bit tricky. We have a couple of considerations for other departments. And it looks like first up, we have an issue about a new fee schedule for our library. So I see Director Chris Obrist with us. And Chris?
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, councilors. I'm here this evening to ask that you adopt resolution number 1936, a resolution adopting miscellaneous library fees and repealing conflicting provisions. This will be updating the library fee schedule resolution number 1640, which was adopted in 2007. You should have the staff report in your packet. The changes are just updating the fees to what they are now. It's been a while, obviously. In addition, it also eliminates library overdue fines, as we would like to move forward as a fine-free library. Are there any questions?
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor McKeel.
So it looks like there's going to be a shortfall of the budget by $5,000 by not have, so let me start over again. Yay, thank you very much. Great. Okay, now here comes the advocate's question. It looks like you're going to fall short $5,000 than from what you had last year. Does this need to be added to the budget? So,
For this year?
Yeah, for the, not this year, but it'd be next year. Because it's like, in my coming off of Black History Month, it'd be great, like, if there's some money in the library budget to do, like, next year, no COVID, something for Black History Month, to kind of, kids.
Yeah. But those are kind of
Author or something.
those are two separate sources of money. All our programming is provided by a budget provided by the Friends of the Library. And yeah, we're just as anxious to get back to in-person programming. It's just not quite there yet. But as far as the difference in the revenues, will you for the fines and fees? I'm trying to look. I know I had it listed in there. It's been trending downwards over the last few years. And in part, a big part of that was the 2020 fiscal year. CCRLS implemented the automatic renewal process, which it's a process, but it essentially automatically renews things, and people were having less overdue items because they were being renewed without them knowing. And when they brought them back late, surprise, you have no fines because there was already that automatic renewal in place. And then the pandemic has really further curtailed that. We have not charged late fines since March of 2020. A big part of that was that the movement of materials around the system was eliminated for a while, and it was greatly impacted due to COVID, and also the quarantining of materials. CCRLS member libraries decided early on that the fair thing to do would be to not charge late fines during this period. And we're kind of coming to the end of that period, so it's a really good time moving forward to just continue on with no fines. I know this is a trend that's been increasing over the past few years. I recently read in a newsletter from the Oregon State Library that just about half of Oregon public libraries have gone fine-free. More libraries in the CCRLS system are going fine-free. I know that Independence is taking their fee schedule to their council at their next meeting, I believe on the 22nd, in order to be able to go fine-free as well. So yes, there will be a little bit of loss of revenue for that. It's a trade-off of service and access.
No, I'm all in agreement. I was wondering, does the city need to be watching that with next year's budget as we're coming up with budgets for next year?
Oh, I'm sure Janet would probably say yes. We watch everything.
Right, but I will say, Councilor McKeel, that at its height, the fines contributions have been about $10,000 a year. And as Chris points out, they've been declining. I would characterize fine revenue as never being something that the city relies on to support its overall budget, similar to municipal court fines, which, as you know, have been declining at a increasing pace, and or even interest revenue. We do rely on property taxes. We do rely on other charges for service that we establish, but a fine you can't count on, because if everybody behaves, you don't get any money, right? And so while yes, there will be potentially a slight decrease, we hope that will be more than offset by other sources, because in the scheme of things, $5,000 to $10,000 in a budget of 35 million doesn't add up to a whole lot. We look for sources wherever we can. We get grants and we try to keep building our resources that way.
Great. That's actually really smart. A friend of mine, I come from a family of librarians. So I know that there are libraries who have their budgets cut by the amount of fines they bring in. So it's nice to know, yes, talk about conflict of interest in that one. It's nice to know that Monmouth once again has stepped up with great wisdom.
Councilor Lopez?
I'd like to make a motion to further frame this discussion, if I may, Madam Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 1936.
Wait.
Yes?
Okay, thank you. And we read the title of the resolution as
Oh,
well.
my apologies. 1936. Adopting miscellaneous library fees and repealing conflicting provisions. Is that the
Second.
title there?
Yeah.
It's been seconded.
All right, we're fighting to the second. So Councillor Lopez on the motion. I'm going to give Councillor Salinas Oliveros a second. And any further discussion or questions? Councillor Carey?
Just to clarify, I didn't see it in the staff report, but when we say we're going to encourage timely return of items, there still is a due date. Is that correct?
Correct. There's a due date. We just aren't going to penalize people for bringing things back late. So there is
Sure.
a whole process in place that they will get notifications. In fact, I think you'll get even more notifications now that your library item is due in a couple days, and then it's going, hey, it was due last week, and to a point where it becomes a lost item, and then you're billed for the item. So if you
Sure.
return the item, we'll take the bill off of your account. If you don't, then you owe us for that book. So the difference between recovering material costs versus fines, as was mentioned, is that fines are sort of arbitrarily placed. There's no guarantee you'll get them. And really, there's no guarantee you'll get lost book either, but you're more likely to get the book back or to get somebody to pay for the book when they truly lost it than just by merely penalizing them for bringing it late. That often is a deterrent for people to return to the library because they feel bad because they didn't get it turned in or, for whatever reason. So this kind of breaks down that barrier as well.
Yeah, I was reminded when I read this of the old Seinfeld episode that had the Tropic of Cancer book that Jerry ended up owing $800 on or something. So gladly, we're not going to make that sort of headline. So a good idea and well put together.
All right, all in favor of adopting resolution number 1936, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Roll call,
Oh, sorry, resolution roll
Yeah.
call.
roll call.
Phyllis
Counselor,
Needs-
Counselor Belts,
Aye.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor Oberst,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Lopez.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks the Library Advisory Board for also considering this. It is a great thing to be able to offer to our community indeed. All right, and another department, at our last meeting, we considered changing the ordinance regarding the senior center. And our director, Barb Cronin, is with us, and she'll remind us what that was and consideration of the first and second reading of a new ordinance.
Excellent. Can you all hear me? Okay,
Mhm.
great. Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. To refresh your memory, from our last meeting, we reviewed, or council reviewed the Senior Advisory Board recommendations, and we discussed changing the number of seats on the Senior Advisory Board from one out of Monmouth resident to up to 4, so no less than 5 Monmouth residents on the board, with the stipulation that the chair and the vice chair of the board be residents of the city of Monmouth. So with the revised ordinance, I'm recommending that the ordinance be adopted as written. That is ordinance 1404 now, an ordinance amending provisions of Monmouth City Code Chapter 2 relating to the Senior Advisory Board.
All right, thank you, Councillor McKeel.
I would just like to jump in here. I move to adopt ordinance 1404, an ordinance amending provisions of Monmouth City Code
Yeah,
Chapter 2.
sorry.
No, sorry.
So because this is an ordinance, a little bit different.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We're just so excited.
I'm going to declare this a first reading of ordinance amending provisions of Monmouth City Code, Chapter 2, relating to Senior Advisory Board, declaring an emergency, ordinance number 1404. And unless there are objections, I will also declare a second reading. Seeing none. And again, as mentioned, an ordinance amending provisions of Monmouth City Code Chapter 2 relating to the Senior Advisory Board and declaring an emergency. And now we will ask Phyllis for the roll call. Now we will ask for.
Yeah, right.
We've done 2 readings. Everyone's had a chance to discuss it.
So can I move?
Go ahead.
I'm moving. I move to adopt ordinance 1404, an ordinance amending provisions of Monmouth City Code Chapter 2 relating to the Senior Advisory Board and declaring an emergency. I don't think we needed to declare the emergency.
Yeah, we do.
We
That
do.
is to
Yes,
effect
to take it
tonight.
immediately.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Counselor Oakers.
So I've spent,
Wait,
it hasn't been
We
seconded.
have a second.
right,
Okay, now it's been moved and seconded. So now discussion.
I've spent the last 2 weeks trying to wrap my head around this and I just can't get there. I step back and I think about how many other cities are willing to have 45% of the directors of a city facility be non-residents. I don't know the answer to that question, frankly, but I bet it's not very many. I worry that we've already, I'm in favor of the fact that we don't charge to use the senior. That said, we have 40% of the people who use it who don't pay 1 penny for it, not in taxes or anything else. And now we're going to have 45% of those folks also be in charge of policy. But the biggest thing that keeps coming back to me is that this is going to set a precedent for our other boards and commissions. And I'm not sure why the library board wouldn't come and ask for 4 non-residents, or the arts commission or the planning commission, and say, I'd like to have non-residents on this committee. And I don't think that those would be, particularly in the case of the library and the planning commission, very good moves. And so, I've tried to get behind this and I just can't get there. 4 is too many. I'd settle for 3, as I said last meeting. So.
Okay. Last we asked if we had a unanimous agreement to move forward in order to conduct the second reading of this and declare the emergency tonight. If we do not have a unanimous decision to move forward with this, then we will declare the first reading tonight, and we do wait until our next meeting to declare a second reading and emergency implementation.
And frankly, I don't think I've ever gotten in the way of something moving forward like this, not just on council, but it's just sort of a general thing in my life. And that might tell you how strongly I feel about this.
It does. All right. We declare this the first reading, and we will bring it back to our meeting in 2 weeks for a second reading. And
Yeah, so essentially the charter has trumped the motion, because you can only do the second reading on the same night as the first reading if there is unanimous consent among the council. So without that, we don't have the legal authority to proceed with a vote on the second reading.
But how do we define unanimity?
Well,
We haven't voted yet. We haven't had a discussion yet.
Well, if you can, I think I understood from John that he's going to vote no, but yeah, if you want to.
Yeah, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And I would say that's probably a good guess.
all right.
there's no, so,
We'll have discussion.
You'll vote next meeting.
Second reading and a vote on the ordinance at the next.
And it can pass by a simple majority then.
yeah. The first time we viewed the topic, we sort of went through pretty hard last time, and it was clear,
Yeah.
the direction. This is the first time we've seen the red line and the language. And I had a couple of comments relative to the language.
Maybe in order for first reading.
Yeah, that's fine for first reading. If anybody would like to see specific language change, it'd be good to bring it up now.
Well, what we're doing.
As it stands. I also think that, you know, this proposal here is a very forward-thinking proposal. The option to broaden the scope of input for the board is really exciting and intriguing for me. I don't, you know, I don't think that means that it will be filled with, you know, 45% or however the numbers come out to non-residents. We as council have to approve every member of that board, so we will still maintain control over the demographic makeup of that board. And if concerns, you know, arise, then we'll have the ability to address those. But this just allows us the flexibility to fill a board that's historically difficult to fill. But thank you very much for that insight, and it's definitely going to make me look at this a little differently. But I'm still, at least at this point, for the current language.
Councilor McKeel?
Is it possible to put in the wording that a quorum of a meeting can only be achieved if the majority are from Monmouth or something like that? And that might take away some of the fear that Councilor Oberst has.
Poor Herbert trying to manage the.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly could. Again, it's a level of management that we don't get to with any other boards and commissions, and wasn't something the council discussed, but you could do that if you wanted to. Say that,
Well, if it's giving you pause.
No, it's not giving me pause. I mean, it would be easy enough to draft. That just takes us a little further afield of sort of the standard board and commission model that we have in the code.
And my comment was just Barbara trying to manage it, right? She gets there, she has to stop, have them sit on opposite sides of the table and count versus how many are appointed to the board, right? So this talks about the time of their nomination, appointment, and tenure in office, not when they're at a meeting versus when they're not at a meeting.
So I guess I would go, I remember we did talk about this last time, I'm sorry. But I guess the next question that I would have is, if we go ahead and do this and we find out that it collapses because it's being owned by people outside of Monmouth, I'm assuming we can come back in and say it was a
Anytime.
problem and we can fix it.
Yeah, anytime.
Absolutely.
And I'm back to my original, let's go with what the board said.
Well, and one of the people that has the biggest stake in this is Barbara. And she's the one that's going to come forward and say, we have a problem, council, help me resolve this. Or she'll go to Marty.
That's
And Madam
very
Mayor,
true.
council, I wonder if there's anything that Barbara might want to add in terms of whether and how the senior advisory board is either different or the same as current city boards and commissions, or just further to your consideration of this ordinance. And I don't know if tonight is the right time to do that.
Definitely. Oh, sorry.
ahead.
I definitely understand Councilor Oberst's concern that it does set a precedent, that this is not a decision that the council has made with any other board or commission of the city. I do understand that. I do also feel very strongly that our board is very unique to the community, and a very different makeup of the type of decisions that it makes. We're not, the senior advisory board doesn't control any monies, but really wants to look at how our city department can be the best resource it can possibly be to older adults that use it. And I do understand that can be considered policy making and things like that, but these aren't the directors of the senior center. I am the director of the senior center. I use this senior advisory board. We all work together as a team to look at how we can be the best resource and get information out to people and things like that. But we're not making any big drastic, the board itself is not making any big drastic changes using city resources. So it's something that I do understand the concern, but I, again, feel strongly that our board is a very unique board. I wouldn't recommend you making this type of a change to many of the other boards or commissions because they're very specific to Monmouth and Monmouth only, and should maintain that. But with so many users of our center, being from just the slightly broader community, I think that it's important that we hear those voices and that we're putting things in place in our center that are going to address issues that older adults have.
Yeah,
hope
and I
that
will
clarifies.
also, I would vow myself for the rest of my time as a liaison to be mindful of this issue as we do find ourselves appointing more out of city residents, and the tenor and tone were to change of the kind of discussions that they're having or the recommendations they might make. And I would certainly charge any council liaison with that same sort of thing, right? We know what the purpose intent of these groups are. We know how our directors interact with the city manager or with us. And so I think we can also be not a break on that, but another site. Councilor Carey.
I think if we've got folks that come from outside and for them to be selected to this board, they would have to be known to other members. I think if they're anxious to serve, I think they've got an energy and they're active and they'd be very valuable members of that whole process, especially given the nature of our center. The only reason I broach any of this is if you have 8 people on the committee, 4 from outside and 4 from 4 residents, you can't have a meeting because you don't have a group, because you don't have the requisite 5. That is my sole concern. And I know that it's unlikely. I get that. I hope I'm not being obstinate, but I'm will vote in favor of this thing when it finally comes. But I'm just letting people know that is a potential issue there. You got 8 people, more than a quorum, but you don't have a board because you don't have the required 5 members. So by definition, you're out. That's my only issue.
Yeah, and if I may, yeah, of course, if you only have 8 people, 4 residents and 4 non-residents, then you are basically sanctioning the advisory board being of equal weight, resident and non-resident.
I'm not concerned about the representation of non-represented people. I'm worried about what it says in, right there. It says you must have 5 members, not less than 5 members that are residents of the city. And if you don't have that, you can't have the group at that moment until you get one.
What I see is basically a sort of a retooling of this to say that the board shall consist of not less than 9 members. And basically, if there are 9, then 5 must be. If there are 8, then we kind of have to go down and say what the breakdown is at each level below 9 members, to a point that you say that's too small.
Again, we're in this because we've got a prescriptive discussion, or we've got a prescriptive, ordinance here, as opposed to the permissive prior, which would allow 1. Didn't require 1, it allowed 1. Now we're talking about bigger numbers than that. If we could say it's 9 and there could be up to 4 members that are non-resident. That is
Maybe.
permissive. It doesn't have to be, but if and you're not hooked into the 9 or to the 5.
So instead of the sentence being
Yeah, no, I get that.
Monmouth
Yeah,
residency,
yeah.
it actually addresses non-Monmouth residents.
I'm not sure that changes the final, let's see.
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
what if it said up to 4 may be non-residents? Does that cover your concern, John?
Sure,
Because now I'm not saying you have to have 5 members of the board.
that's my concern.
And here I am making this suggestion when I don't like the 4. Maybe this will,
Yeah, I guess, and I'm a little, it's my issue to get over, not yours. A little uncomfortable drafting an ordinance that says there shall be 9 and then immediately backing off from that in the rest of the ordinance and assuming that you're going to have less than 9.
No, it's.
But it does happen.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
But what it currently reads is that the board shall consist of 9 members appointed by the mayor and approved by the council. And then in old language, all but one, which is again permits 1 board member to live outside of the city of Monmouth. So I'm just trying to find a way that we can meet. We can have a legitimate board, include the people from, that Barbara and others would like to make this a functioning and vital board, but have a legal board. That's my whole thing.
yeah, if you want to say that all but 4 board members must reside, I would still leave that at the time of their nomination, appointment, and tenure, just to make that clear. That has to be a continuous requirement. We can do that.
That's.
And we could make that change on second reading. So we wouldn't, yeah.
Okay, Counselor Lopez?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe that what I'm hearing is a concern over the potentiality of a board that is, for lack of a better word, controlled in a specific meeting by non-Monmouth individuals. And I'm saying a head shake no, but I've heard from different individual different concerns about that. I believe that, if I'm reading this correctly, Lane, a meeting can't be held without the chair or vice chair. In the second the second paragraph, it seems to state that they're the ones to call the meeting. So no meeting could be held without the express direction and consent of a Monmouth resident anyway. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the chair shall preside over the meetings. That's right, or the vice president in his place.
Yeah. So even if we did have a situation where, perhaps there was a board that wasn't full to that total 9, and they, regardless of how the verbiage reads in that first paragraph, the board wouldn't have to meet. They wouldn't have to accomplish anything if there was threat of interlopers from without, because the Monmouth residents hold the chair and vice chair positions and would control the pace of those meetings and whether or not the board even met. So I feel like we're getting very worked up about something that because of that fail-safe is not as much of an issue. And maybe I'm completely off base regarding the concern, but it seems to be answered there.
Counselor Oberst and Counselor McKeel,
Chris,
have more
thanks.
discussion at the next meeting.
Right, Chris, I think the concern is not about the domination of a meeting, but the way it's phrased right now, we've got a 9-member board called for. not less than 5 members shall be residents of Monmouth. If you've only got Monmouth residents and you've got 4 out of town, you've got 8 board members, you can run a meeting. But no, you can't, because you don't have 5 Monmouth residents, and the ordinance calls for there to be, shall be 5 Monmouth residents on the board. And I think that, John, is that is not that, okay, it's a structural issue around, you can't have a meeting unless you have a full rack of 5 Monmouth residents on the board. And if you're short one, then the board grinds to a halt under this wording. You could reword it by saying up to, my suggestion, up to 4 maybe non-residents. And then, you're assuming that you're going to have 5 slots for Monmouth people, but you could wind up in that case with a board that consists of 4 non-residents and 1 resident. President and, two residents. President, President and Vice President of the board. So, and I don't know the answer. I'm just, I think that was John's concern, was more of a structural issue than a who's going to run the thing issue. And wanting to make sure that however this is structured, a board that does not have the full membership of 5 Monmouth residents can still function. And I don't know how to do that either.
Yeah, so to be clear, so as I see it, then if you've appointed 9 members, and let's say 3 city members drop off, you've got 6 now. Now you have a board that is made up of 4 non-residents and 2 residents that complies with the permissive language.
Right.
Yeah, if that's what you want. I didn't hear that last time.
That'd be a huge concern for me. Just again, and I'm going to go all the way back to our first discussion of this issue on the taxpayer dollars.
Majority of them would never be. A majority of the independence of the members would mean you could never have 5 to 4.
to 4. But then you're only, that's the only group that you're actually managing.
You would have, if you
If you have
have
9,
9.
right,
And then in your example, if you only have 6
Laying out a very nice structural.
with a variety of very specific subjects that might fit different funding.
It should hope it does.
Yeah.
You know, she, so that's the way that's.
We have our representatives there, and that's great. And also, our state legislature wraps up this week. Things are in it or in, but we're hearing from representatives that we have to bill for a homeless pilot. The city county cooperative. It has passed as well as specific
transition there. I also want to call to your attention that Willamette Valley Fiber, which is what we've called MyNet's body of service outside of the traditional legacy footprint, so outside of Monmouth and Independence, Willamette Valley Fiber was given an award, Business of the Year in Dallas. And so that's a huge deal. The Willamette Valley Fiber location is, we do have an office there. It's right in downtown Dallas, right in the center of things. There is a mural, you may recall the IO article on it a year or so ago. Big mural, a beautiful mural on the side that was painted by the community there through that outreach. And they're really enjoying it out there. And I'll tell you, the service out there is no different than the service here. I think it's just that it's new, so it feels very exciting, very fresh, and a wonderful, testament to the growth potential of this organization that we've created. Also, and I won't go into too many technical details because they're a little above my head, but they have been doing a lot of work in increasing the resiliency of the network, as well as the not just the physical network that we've all heard a lot about, but also their internal resiliency as well. And one of the new things that they've done is created a full offsite backup of MyNet's operational resources. So there's, so this will allow, if there was something catastrophic to happen to a physical server there, they would be able to repopulate that with an offsite backup. So great things there to make sure that this continues to be successful through the future. 3 updates on past items or soon to come items that should be on your radar. The general manager search, we still have an interim general manager, PJ, and he has been doing fantastic, but that general manager search is still in progress. Look forward to more information coming in the future. The county grants, we did receive 3 county grants for expansion into rural areas. This is part of the rural broadband expansion and all that energy that's going on behind that from different levels of government. Those are moving forward. We did approve the contract language for 2 of the 3. The 3rd contract, the largest of the 3, that language is just getting a little bit more scrutiny. It's still pending, but I anticipate approval of that and official moving forward with that shortly. And the IGA and franchise agreements, they're in dire need of revision and modernization. Nothing ground shaking there, but they are out of date in terms of how business is operated here today. If you'll recall our franchise agreement with other franchisees in the area, actually used to mention a PEG channel and PEG fees, which no longer exists. So both of those documents will be needing revision, and expect to see those coming in the not too distant future. That concludes my report on MyNet, and the next meeting currently is scheduled for March 24th at 30. However, there is a recurring conflict, and so with that meeting with one of our directors, myself actually, and so we're looking at locating a more appropriate time for that meeting to be held. As soon as that's determined, you will hear about it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Lots of news. Councilor McKeel.
Madam Mayor, I'm so sorry. I was remiss in not in the tree advisory board. On the flyers, it shows the Bartlett tree experts, and they were the generous suppliers of those 1,000 seedlings. And I got so excited about the music, I forgot about the very generous contribution we had from Bartlett Tree Experts.
Thank you.
But they would have enjoyed the song anyway.
We
you go.
want to recognize them for that. Great donation. Thanks. Other board and commission reports, Councilor Ober.
These aren't really board and commissions directly, but Parks, one of the things that Parks is working on is the skate park, a new skate park at the S-curve. One of the things there will be seeking grants, as we see on our list of future agenda items. One of the things that grants like is evidence of community support for the project. So we had a bottle drive this last weekend, and the current estimate is around 200 of the big blue bags full of bottles and cans. We purchased 180 bags, and there are 11 left over, but there were already some bags full at the Public Works. So average of around $3-4 a bag, somewhere in that range. So $600 to $800 of additional funds for that project. We have received the 90% drawings with a cost estimate. The cost was originally estimated at around $750,000, and darn it, it's gone down to $500,000 instead, which was a real shock to just about everybody, myself included. So, that if that holds, that will make it that much easier to achieve the funding necessary to get it done. I'm a member of the Highway 99 Biped Study Group, which had a meeting today. ODOT is doing a really good job of looking at the conditions along that highway and really focusing on the crossings. We had an opportunity online to give them additional input. The two highest scoring projects were to do something about the Church Street crossing and to do something about the Madrona Street crossing. And we did a little refinement, particularly on the Madrona proposal. Church Street is still a little bit up in the air, and if for no other reason, the third thing I want to report on is the Safe Routes to School Planning Grant, which we first received approval of that grant, I think 3 years ago, and then all of a sudden kids weren't in school anymore. And so it didn't make sense to seek input from parents and students for that study. Now that they're back in school, we have had opportunities to observe and talk to people and so on. The initial report came in this week. They've done a nice job on identifying all the issues. They went out about a mile around MES and, looked at the routes that kids took and the problems along those routes, calling out speeds, attempts to control speeds, crosswalks, places to put in ramps, places to put in. Oh, geez, it just went on and on. It was really, I sat down to read the thing and only got about 2/3 of the way through it before I had to move on to a different project. So I've got to go back to that still. But for an initial proposal, very thoughtfully done, thoroughly researched and considerate of what it was putting forward. If we can dovetail that with the Highway 99 study around Church Street and get something that addresses everything at that intersection. And what I was urging ODOT today is not to look at the problems now, but let's plan for the future and think about what 99 is going to look like in 5 years if we have more development to the north, perhaps more development to the south, but more likely to the north. And what are we going to do with that traffic? And to their credit, they're really listening and they're looking at creative solutions to help us get across that highway on foot, on wheels, however you get around. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you for your continued engagement in that. That's pretty important. All right, and seeing no others, I'll go ahead and have Marty give us that update.
Thank you. One of the benefits of being the last on the reports list is that many of you have reported on many of the things that I was also planning to mention. So thank you for all that.
I'm sorry.
I just have a couple items for the city manager's report tonight. And thank you for the recap of our visit with the congressional office staff with Betsy Emery from last weekend. Thank you to Suzanne and to you, Councilor Carey, for the tour. I think it was really effective. And she has already followed up and given us ideas about grant grant opportunities and how they might be leveraged with our, with perhaps the federal infrastructure bill and, other ideas that match with projects and priorities that we have in our area. So I felt like that was a really good opportunity to showcase what's happening in Monmouth, and it was great to make that connection. Let's see, most of you know that Oregon Health Authority and California, Oregon, and Washington this week revised the mask recommendations to be just recommendations only on March 12th, beginning March 12th. And so here at City Hall and all the city offices and operations, we've been talking about how we'll implement those recommendations and change our signage and our message to our customers about masks being optional, but still strongly recommended. So you'll see some of that messaging change as we move forward this month. Let's see. I think it's probably a month or more ago, I let you know that we were the recipient, Monmouth was in the lead as recipient of funds to be working on the Monmouth Independence Trolley Project. And so we received $3 million in an appropriation from the state and its state ARPA funding to develop a trolley service between Monmouth Independence and connecting Western Oregon University with the river and Independence. It's been quiet since I mentioned that we received that funding, but there's been a working group that's been putting together a service plan to put together a pilot project for the trolley. And I just wanted you to know that work is still underway. And our hope is that we can bring forward a pilot project sometime potentially in 2022 and probably near the end of the year. But the idea would be that the pilot would run for some time to be able to demonstrate proof of concept. So in case you were wondering what was going on with the trolley, there's work underway to still try to make that service move forward. Let's see, other things I haven't mentioned. Last week, the City Hall Key Communicators Group met, and I think once again, this group has been a really great source of good ideas and ways to think about talking about the City Hall project as an asset to the community. And so we did, in essence, a virtual walkthrough of what the design of the new City Hall would look like. And I think that was the key communicators got to meet our project team, our architects, FFA, and Swinnerton, our general contractor. And that group continues to meet. I think they're going to continue to meet monthly and give feedback about the way the project can be more visible in the community. And as something visible starts to happen with the project, I think they've been a great resource to give us good ideas about how to communicate about the project. Also on the City Hall front, we have some not so good news on the project front. And I mentioned in my Friday notes that we've got some project staffing changes that we are finding out about. One is that our owner's representative, who we've contracted with Western Oregon University, with the individual who was going to serve in that role, is leaving the university. So I'm going to continue to work with Western Oregon University to replace our owner's representative, our construction manager. And then we also discovered yesterday that our project architect is leaving FFA. And so they are also going to be in course to replace that individual. I'm hoping that means not too much, but potential delay on the project while we are continuing to get ourselves organized, but some of our project management is going to be changing over. So that's news, not so welcome news, but I'm hoping that it won't result in too much of a delay. And then finally, I just wanted to report that probably a year and a half ago, we entered into a development agreement with Monmouth Commons as they were getting their work underway for the Urban Renewal Agency to make a contribution to that development project. And one of the things that I have been meaning to report back to the council is that we've entered into 2 addenda to that agreement because the developer of that project has run into unforeseen conditions, most of which you see when you drive up Main Street, as they've been replacing the water and sewer lines. So in the Friday notes, I'll be updating for you. The Urban Renewal Agency has given a greater than anticipated contribution to that project. The initial contribution we agreed to was $327,000. We have some additional and unanticipated conditions that are about $21,000. And I just wanted to keep the council informed about that project and that we Even though you're seeing people moving in and the project is getting wrapped up, we were still a contributor to the infrastructure to that project. And we've had a couple of changes to the agreement. I think that's all I've got. So thank you for also making all of your reports, because I got to check things off my list. Oh, I'm sorry, one other thing about Minnet. You're going to be seeing a report from Minnet coming forward, and as you asked for the last time they came to report, they've been the recipient of some grants from Polk County to expand broadband in some rural parts of the county. And they're excited to come and report to you about the expansion opportunities that they have underway. So you'll see them in a couple of, probably next month. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, we have one work session item, again, a follow-up to a discussion we had last month. And I'm going to take this opportunity, if Suzanne won't be on camera from the front, but tonight, a couple of us are wearing these shirts. They say, "Howl from the Heart, Western Oregon University." Today is Western Oregon University's Day of Giving. And I encourage all of you, after the meeting, of course, to log on to wou.edu/giving day and find out ways that your contributions from $5 to thousands of dollars can benefit Western Oregon scholarships and funds for various parts of campus. There are some great challenge matches. My donation today led to a $2,500 match, for example, for the Smith Fine Arts series, of which I'm a patron. So, as Lane is as well. So there are great opportunities to give to Western today, and appreciate if you saw the city's Facebook. We had several of our staff members today wearing "Howl from the Heart." So thank you, Suzanne.
All right. We all ready for the work session? Okay, super. Well, thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, members of the City Council. We have a work session follow-up on the marijuana code regulations. We had looked at them and just had a discussion at the February 1st meeting. It's been 5 years since the initial ordinance was adopted with the current regulations that we have in place now. And so it was just a chance for staff to check in with the council and see if those are still the policies, see how they're working, and if those are still the ones they want to have in place. At that work session, the council did express an interest in exploring making some tweaks to that ordinance, sounds like specifically to some of the location and spacing requirements. And so staff was asked to do a little bit of research on what other similar sized cities in Oregon are doing, and bring back some information about any of the police response concerns that may have come out of over the last 5 years with the existing facilities that we have now. And we provided some information on the revenues that have also come in from the marijuana taxes. So just hitting on a few highlights of that report. Hopefully you've had a chance to read that, and we can have that discussion on any questions you might have about it. Staff did look at, so staff, myself, and associate planner, Liz Congratz, does a great job of doing some research on 8 similar sized cities in Oregon. And we presented that in a table that's attached to your report tonight. I would say the regulations kind of ranged, there wasn't a clear pattern, I guess I would say, with the regulations. There is a lot of, I guess, individual choice with the communities and which regulations they adopted. 2 of the cities actually prohibited marijuana facilities. That was Fairview and Baker City, the 2 similar sized cities that we looked at. Probably the most common one that we saw was a spacing standard. So having some kind of requirements on a spacing distance between marijuana retail dispensaries themselves and or with other community facilities such as parks and libraries. So all of the cities have regulations on how far they can be from schools. So that's a state law. So that was not included in there. But I think one city actually also included daycare facilities in their definition of schools. So there's a little information there about that. Staff also prepared some zoning maps, some colorful zoning maps. So I think that was one of the things that was asked for at the last meeting, to get a better visual on where the location of the zones and the dispensaries where they're currently allowed now. The pre-zoning maps, hopefully they're not too crazy busy with all those colors, but they do show what we call some buffers. So they illustrate buffers around the existing school facilities that we have. Those are elementary and secondary schools. It doesn't include universities. That's the 1,000-foot buffer that the state requires. And then there's a 1,000-foot buffer around existing dispensaries and a 250-foot buffer around public facilities such as the library. And I believe Main Street Park was one of the ones that was included in that as well. So we can go through those if you have some questions about that and what those mean. The last items that staff also provided some information on include the police activity. So police department provided response data for the 5 dispensaries that we have now over the past 5 years. That information was summarized by staff in a table. The police chief overall commented that it's not out of the ordinary or norm from what he would expect or in terms of police response. Didn't call it problematic. The most common response was for alarm systems that we saw. And then also included some information about marijuana tax collection that's happened since 2017 for both the local and state taxes. And Janet graciously provided that information, so you can see that we've received just over $500,000 over the past last year to date. So I guess that's over 5 years. There are some changes proposed to those, and so I'm hoping Janet might be on the call if there are specific questions about that. But the League of Oregon Cities has been advocating for cities to be able to restore, I think, some of those taxes that have been recently decreased by the state. So, and then just lastly, the report goes over the code amendment process. So if the council does decide this evening to initiate an amendment to our existing marijuana ordinances, you would provide that direction to staff on which changes of the codes that you'd like to see. We'll take that, staff will take that to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will have work sessions to review specific code language. And then we'd bring that back to the City Council once they've had a public hearing and made a formal recommendation to the City Council. So with that, you do have some alternatives outlined on in the report to either do nothing if you feel that they're fine, that no further changes are needed, or you can initiate a code amendment and kind of specify, what areas you might want to see some tweaks or changes to the current ordinance. So sorry, that's kind of a lot of information, a high level summary of that. I'm sure there's probably some questions that you may have about that. I'd be happy to answer those.
Oh, this is great. In a short period of time, too, right? We're gonna just hold this, gather this information so that we can consider this right away. I really, really appreciate it. Again, lots of good options of things we did ask about and things that we noticed in our code. And if we would like to start off discussion about these findings.
Sorry, I'll put one summary comment because this seemed to be one of the central points of discussion at the last meeting and work session. We talked about, should these uses be
specifically prohibited in the downtown area, where area that we're very proactively trying to encourage certain uses and business mixes. And there's limited amounts of properties. I was kind of surprised in these examples to bring back to you and tell you that, of the cities that do allow marijuana businesses, only one of them, Prineville specifically, doesn't allow them in their commercial zones. Like they have to be an industrial zone. So the way they control the amount, I guess, if you will, in their downtown, it really is through that spacing requirement. So how close the retail dispensaries can be to one another, or how close they can be to things like parks, which are often downtown, or libraries, or public facilities.
If I may, just again, the legal framework is that you have the authority to impose reasonable limits on location, time, manner, place. But those regulations can't be used to functionally prohibit the location of a dispensary. But otherwise, you've got some flexibility.
Thank you for that reminder.
Yep.
Like you can't say any house with children in it, I presume, because that would be a bit prohibitive, isn't it? As opposed to date. All right, but Sir Kerry.
Well, I'll start. I mean, I'm sure others have it, but, as I looked at this, and where I started with the idea of limiting in our main street area, our downtown area, and as Suzanne mentioned. And the primary reason for that is, that I don't see that as an additive type business. Whereas I think others are. I mean, you're going to go there for probably one reason and then you're out. Whereas you may go to, have lunch and do something else somewhere else. I just don't see it, and you don't stay there at those dispensaries in particular. So I don't see that as really fitting with what we would with what we would like to do there. So I'm still at that point, perhaps maybe even because there isn't a lot of it. Commercial retail transition. There's not much of that, is there, Susanna?
No, it's they're just the little bright red properties on the outskirts of the Candy Stripe Main Street zone, which is the red and white diagonal stripe. So they're just kind of clustered around Monmouth Avenue. It's over by Clay Street, where you have, the Praise Assembly. There's a couple parcels there, and then a couple up by campus, where the dance studio and hair salon is, North Monmouth Avenue.
And I really appreciated the buffer zones, the 250 around. Now the 1,000 feet around schools, that's state law, so there's no negotiation on that. But the 250 around public facilities and the 1,000-foot buffer with from spacing of dispensaries I appreciated being able to look at that. That was good data, and you're right, Madam Mayor, put together in a quick time frame. As I looked at that, I tried to ask the question: what are we trying to solve by adding this layer onto it? We're already sort of prohibiting or limiting if we use the logic that we have for the Main Street district. There's not a lot of space remaining. We've got some we've got two that are kind of right on top of each other right now. I don't know, I don't know that we solve anything substantial there. And as I look at the 250 around public facilities and, parks and libraries and that sort of thing, as I drove down Main Street coming to coming today, this evening, and I noticed the Oasis there, and that would be within that 250 feet of the park. And I didn't really see anything that troubled me by that, based on the outside view. And it said cannabis, and there was a green leaf. But beyond that, I didn't see anything that would be enticing. I didn't see anything that would be, that would be poisoning the children that might play in the park. I could be convinced otherwise, but I'm just not one that likes to find things, unless there's a real reason for them, and I couldn't find that. So I'd be interested if others have that, I guess. But good work. Thank you for the turnaround on it. It's awesome. Really good.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about the downtown is not the park necessarily. And again, that provider is fine, but if we don't put additional restrictions, somebody else could move in next door to them and not be quite as circumspect in their signage. So you're still across from the park.
Yeah.
That's still an option for somebody to display that. But I think we did talk a lot about preserving the downtown character and allowing different types of businesses in, which I think is a great economic goal. So, other thoughts, what did others see here that I think the intriguing and interesting thing to me, because I would have thought, well, the public facilities buffer is interesting, right? That could include the library and the park, all of our parks potentially. City Hall, any of our public facilities, the skate park's a great addition to that, Monmouth Rec Park. But it does still leave a lot of that downtown area open. And as Suzanne mentioned, the bright red pieces at the sort of edge of the downtown zone. But if you look at the 1,000-foot dispensary and you look and say, well, the ones we have now, boy, that is a nice big circle that covers a lot of space where we could have no additional dispensaries locate. That's much more inclusive of our entire downtown. So that one would seem to have the effect of really any additional businesses coming into town spreading out a little bit so that it's not the thing you see right here in downtown. Councilor Obers?
I would echo John's comments about our current downtown dispensary. And there's one in West Salem whose sign just says weed.
Yeah.
And, no. And I'm really glad we don't have that. I was not in favor of allowing dispensaries in the Main Street District when we first enacted this. I would maintain that position. I would prefer we didn't have any additional ones at this point. If in fact drawing a 1,000-foot circle around our current dispensaries doesn't quite blanket the entire business district, but certainly increases separation, I think I would favor that. I don't want to see a string of 4 dispensaries, one right on top of another. We've already got 2 that are next door neighbors. And a question for you, Lane, if one of these dispensaries changes ownership, does that
Grandfather.
and the grandfathering, as it's called, or?
It's based on use.
Okay,
So if it changes ownership, the use can continue.
so if it's a new owner, it just continues, okay. That's what I thought I remembered.
But if it goes out of business and then it doesn't qualify under the new standards, a new one wouldn't be able to locate.
Okay, got it. That's what I thought I remembered you saying last time. I couldn't be sure.
And the 1,000-foot doesn't quite get us to Ash Creek Station, for example, our only other sort of retail concentration, but would the 250 buffer, the 250 public use would because of the skate park.
Right.
Not correct.
And I think that would be a good one too.
Oh, boy.
Counselor Peel.
Well, can we add them up? I mean, so like we could say no more in downtown. And, you know, like the other cities did, have the 1,000-foot. And then, yeah, I don't see anything for Ash Creek that's over there for a buffer. There's no park or anything there, right?
Just the
skate
skate
park.
park, but it doesn't cover the buffer doesn't cover the whole Ash Creek Station property. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much the only area that a new one would be allowed.
How big would that buffer have to be? How much is being proposed?
That's,
250 feet?
if it's from the skate park, you'd probably,
Yes.
I mean, I'd want to obviously map that out, but I think it'd have to be over 500 to 1,000 feet maybe. We could test it and see.
Is the fire department considered one of the buildings?
Is the fire department one? Is that what you asked? or-
Yeah, considered one of the buildings? I mean.
So that's actually an independent.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, but I remember
That's
being
right
told
where
it's
the
sort
Part
of
of
both
the-
borders.
Part of the parking lot is
Got it.
that corner of the parking lots in our city limits, but that wouldn't apply
Putt-putt's not-
as one of our public buildings.
Just trying to get that.
Can we keep it to heavy industrial, which would then keep it out of the Esper Ash Creek area? I think, if we said it can only go into heavy industrial.
Yep, that's the approach that Prineville took in their code amendments. Would make all of the existing ones non-conforming. Lane was talking about. but
Right, so
to be able to
we wouldn't have to
continue.
worry about downtown, 1,000 feet or anything. If we
Highway
said
99, yeah,
heavy industrial is the only place you can put this.
yeah, either south, it's the gray area basically on those zoning maps, so. Yeah,
Would that force them to move then, to close and move?
not immediately, so it was just like Lane was talking about, if they close and it's over a year-long process where it's just vacant or empty,
Right.
then a new one can't go in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So heavy industrial is the gray, if you're looking at the 1,000-foot circles there, it's that gray rectangle just south of there.
Yeah, there's some down by the storage units, right? The power station down
Okay.
here. And then also off of Hoffman Road, there's a swath of it.
On the other hand, are they a big problem where they are? I mean, do we have, because wouldn't that be the concern? Let's push them out to the edge of town because of something. I mean, the only thing I've ever seen outside the dispensary Oasis is, girls selling Girl Scout cookies. So is it a problem?
Not according to the police data, response shows that there's, it depends on how, I guess, what you define as a problem. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it's solely a policy choice on that. Mhm.
Counselor Oberst and Counselor McHugh, Counselor Salinas Oliveros, do you have your hand up?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, let's let
Go
you
ahead.
go first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I do agree with maintaining the spacing, and I think that will help spread out the look as well if we have too many together. And then we can also think of it at, if they're spread out, there's equitable opportunities at all of these different dispensaries. But I do want to thank Chief Haynes and the Monmouth PD for putting that information together. I think that we know, okay, it's not really a huge problem as far as with our police department and in our community. So that's good to know. And so I think that will help us as far as not limiting. I mean, I guess I worry about the message that our city sends. I worry about the variety of businesses. I don't want us to be marijuana capital of the, of Polk County. And I think spreading them out and the spacing will help with some of those issues while also allowing businesses to come in. And then thinking about what Councilor Oberst was saying the last time we had this discussion about, well, these are businesses and, you know, and you know, and he's correct in that these are businesses and we can allow them to operate because it's going to be kind of the natural economic wave that we're in. They're either going to be in business or not in business. So we really can't, I guess, prohibit that. So I would be in favor of spreading them out and preserving the downtown, really looking at making that family friendly, where you get together, where you convene, and that's kind of the hub of where everyone should be in our city. Oasis has always been non-problematic and you know, very professional, so that's not a huge deal. But I think at this point, I think we could spread these businesses out because we do have quite a bit of them now, and then hopefully try to preserve even the look of 99, because I know eventually we want to determine what people are seeing as they come in off of 99 as well. So I think spreading them out will also help in that sense when we're continuing to plan for our city.
Great. Go ahead, Councilor Oberst, then Councilor McKeel. Thank you.
I would echo that, Rebecca. You know, like, this is the guy who pushed to allow beer and wine sales in the community. I'm not a big fan of prohibition. I grew up in the Bible Belt with 90 out of 120 counties in my state dry. That said, this is a legal product. I have no problem with these stores. The problem that I've had is the concentration of them, the potential for still more dispensaries in our community, and there comes a saturation. I'm not sure where it is, and I don't really want to get there. You know, we're at what, 4 now, and 5, 6, 7 for, you know, what are we going to have, 1 per every 1,000 residents? And it's not serving the residents necessarily, it's people passing through. So, you know, let's let those who are here continue to be here. May they thrive, may they continue to pay taxes into the city coffers. But I would really favor an effort to spread them out with 1,000-foot spacing. I would favor trying to keep them away from parks and other, you know, government facilities, but especially parks. The skate park across from the S-curve development worries me a little bit. And frankly, one downtown is enough. Should it ever go away, it would be nice to not have a replacement. The one we've got does a nice job. They do keep themselves looking clean. Let's let them keep doing what they're doing and just move forward from here. It's just, I don't want to see a bunch more, that's all. We're in good shape.
I guess I'm going to just say, I like this thinking as well. Councilor Salinas Oliveros really said it well. And I guess beyond families, because we have a lot of university students, so I guess you wouldn't necessarily call them families in that kids thing. However, just driving up and down Monmouth, just this last couple of weeks, I'm seeing people going to shops and stopping for coffee and walking down the street with coffee. And the downtown is looking like a gathering place. And while the marijuana shops are, maybe we should use cannabis shops, are, again, as everybody has said, it's a legitimate business. It's not a gathering place. So I think it'd be fine to put it into a heavy industrial area because people are just going to go there, get their thing, and then go to the gathering place. But maybe not smoke it there. You're just going there. Never mind. I'll just stop talking now. But I do like the idea that we really don't need them in downtown. Those should be people places.
Councilor Lopez?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And I've been largely quiet on this topic. I think a lot of that is just my own internal strife that's been really expressed very well by all of you all. And so I'll be short here and just say that I think having a buffer zone to spread them out a little bit certainly makes sense, and also protecting our Main Street district makes sense. You know, I am looking at a lot of the parks, and it looks like in the parks, maybe I missed something, but in that 250-foot public facilities buffer, a lot of the parks weren't, of the smaller parks at least, weren't encircled there. I'd imagine that if we did enact something along those lines, the smaller parks would fall into that protected space as well. Like Southgate Park doesn't have a circle on it. There's a number of others that don't. So I guess when we combine everything together, like I think they're all great ideas. But combining everything together, and then I look at the map and say, gosh, where could you have it? And then I think, well, you know, protecting Main Street, protecting that kind of corridor, that 99 corridor, revitalizing. I know we haven't specifically spoken about it, but it's been hinted at a couple times. And so then once we add everything in, I don't see where anyone really, aside from the industrial land, I don't see where anyone could be. So I think I'm in favor of picking our top criteria of areas that we're trying to protect. For me, that would be the Main Street district. And then one other, whether it's spacing or whether it's the public facilities, and going with that as opposed to going with all the above. And I know that wasn't specifically on the table, but it's just me kind of working through my concerns.
Great, thank you for that. I think we'll point out the reason other parks aren't here, they are typically in residential districts, which we don't allow commercial retail in residential districts currently anyway. So that's potential. My question might be, however, about a mixed use zone that could allow commercial use.
Are you referring to the mixed density residential or which mixed use zone?
Right. We have a mixed use residential neighborhood that has a commercial space.
Yeah, it does, and it specifically prohibits marijuana facilities out of it currently right now. So the only, I guess, true mixed use zone that we have is, well, we have two, to stand corrected, the Main Street district and the commercial residential transition. And those both do currently allow them now. So enacting buffers though would, or prohibiting them in those zones would potentially change and that would allow those.
And actually, if you look in the school buffer zone, the S curve falls within the school buffer zone, except for just this little strip.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of the Ash Creek Station parcel where Tractor Supply and Roth's is and O'Reilly's that falls out of it. And I'll have to check this, but there may actually be CC&R's place, which are covenants, conditions, restrictions, private rules that ban facilities from that development. So I can go back and check that and see that as well. So.
Thank you.
It's like when you have there's the only clear space of the school buffer zones. This is, what is that, probably a quarter mile? It's almost like not the spirit of the law to allow that little spot among all these school buffer zones. So it would be, which takes me back to the industrial zones that clearly keeps them out of those spaces that we're trying to keep open for either people spaces or school zones or park.
Yeah, that would be harder for people to develop in those right now. Obviously, in the North Industrial Zone, we don't have water, we don't have electricity, so that would have a pretty good effect of keeping them from building at all.
Well, but it might actually help develop that area if we have people interested in going up there. So, right? Maybe, I don't know development that well.
Councilor Carey.
I guess I'm a little troubled by the sense that we need to be protecting people from these businesses. Now, I understand But let's remember, they're legal, and these are legal it's a legal substance, and it's a legal, legitimate business. One of the reasons I wonder that we're not having really much difficulty, much problem, as the police have reported, is because the businesses that we have are in plain sight. My concern about shoving them into an industrial area, that's in around, take it right at the backhoe, and, I'm the guy in the back. You don't see that, you don't have, there's not the regular, public presence, police presence, everything that goes along sort of with that. And we have to be, the school zones are defined. There's no question about that. But if we start talking about parks and public buildings, we need to remember that we're encouraging people to ride bikes more, or we're encouraging people to walk more. I drive between where I live and Ash Creek Station, the S curves often, and unfortunately, a lot of times when school is being let out, there's a lot of foot traffic that runs all along that road. Some of it dives off onto Alberta, I think it is, or whatever, but there's a lot of foot traffic. So just the physical space of a park doesn't protect the children that are playing there. We got to be, I think aware of that, a bit. And there are some places that like to cluster businesses because they can keep an eye on them. You spread them out. Now who knows what's going on. I haven't been over that way in 3 weeks. Well, I'm up and down 99 all the time, so I can see any sort of activity that might be there. So there's a lot of different directions to take.
Councilor Bell?
So I do agree with the idea of setting these buffer zones. I think that does make a lot of sense. Pushing legitimate businesses out. One of the things that concerns me about that is these businesses are cash only because of the federal law. And that's putting individuals that are carrying cash, either working there or doing business there, to me at greater risk, because as you said, they are out in the middle of nowhere. And I'm just really concerned. I mean, I don't frequent these places, and I've always said, if nobody frequents them, they'll go out of business. So clearly we've got 4 of them in business and they're staying in business. So, but I just think it sets a very bad precedent to start saying, well, we don't agree with this morally, so we're going to shove you to the edge of town. What happens when it's a liquor store? What happens when it's an adult shop or something else, that we don't personally agree with? I'm just really concerned about doing that, and the safety of the people that work there, and the safety for the people that want to frequent those places.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and I haven't really heard any of us express personal moral objections to the business.
No.
But what I would characterize any of the discussions.
Okay, I
It
probably.
could happen in the future. I haven't heard that.
I guess my interpretation of all the concern comes from, where does the concern come from? Because we've been told they're not a problem. So that's what I'm trying to figure out, is where does the concern come from?
So I think my concern that brought us to this is concentration, a lack of, we have limited commercial retail space. We have constant requests for different kinds of retail. We've got some great new businesses coming in, a small candy shop, for example. People are finding us a desirable place to locate a small business that can grow into a big business. And it's just unfortunate because we don't have a lot to offer. And I hate seeing it be one kind of business. Though, those of us who've been around forever, all on with an Independence hat, we're pizza places and Chinese restaurants, right?
Yes.
And it was kind of a joke, but it wasn't a joke. And now we've been really fortunate to attract other kinds of businesses, same thing. And I want to say we've got 8 retail spaces and 4 of them are cannabis. I think that's the main
Okay.
reason my interest lies and what I've heard from others.
And I apologize because I wasn't here at the meeting where you talked about this the first time. So I apologize for not having enough background.
And I would agree with that. See, so I think that, you know, you drive into Monmouth on 99, not knowing this town, and you say, police station, auto parts, restaurant, hotel, pot shop. And it does not, you know, and not to say that they're an evil business or anything like that, but it's still in a lot of people's minds, there's still this just sort of general sense. That said, I agree wholeheartedly with not pushing them out to the edge of town. Newport built their skate park on the edge of town, and it's been nothing but trouble. We build ours in the middle of everything where people can see it.
That's right.
Same principle, John, what you were saying earlier. Put it out there where it's right out in front of everybody, and you don't have problems.
And Carol, did you have another?
Well, I don't know that the heavy industrial area south of town is in the middle of nowhere. So maybe the northern part is. But I also, I like to see the new gathering places that are happening downtown, where people are wanting to go down there because there's things for them to do. And it's not a go in, buy something, go home. It's becoming a browsing place. And you see this in little towns that put in antique shops, you know, specialty shops where people come in to do these specialty shopping. There's a reason to go into that town. It's a reason to like ride your bicycle into town. And so as Mayor Kuhn said, when you have very limited retail space to use up something that you just go in, you buy, you go home, is not going to be bringing people into kind of a gathering place of downtown where people are walking and enjoying being in a downtown.
And Councilor Salinas Oliveros, then I want to try and take a temperature of a couple of directions to go here. Suzanne,
Sure.
Lenny. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Coons. I guess I really like the concept of diversifying our businesses, our downtown. It goes with a lot of the goals that we want. It goes with our vision of the gathering places. And if we're not thoughtful about this, then we're going to be stuck with just certain kinds of businesses all the time, instead of diversifying our businesses, and not to push them out, to spread them out, because we don't want to have 3, 4, 5 in a row. That I think that sends the wrong message. And frankly, if that's on 99, what's going to entice people to come downtown to see what else we have to offer? So diversifying the businesses and really being thoughtful about that, I think is important.
All right, I would just, will it give anyone heartburn if we take forward to the planning commission a ban, a limit of 1,000 feet radius for location of cannabis dispensaries?
Going forward.
Going forward, yeah, we're not, all this is going forward. Does that cause heartburn, or can we
That
kind of
would
move
make,
that
that would
forward?
cause, I mean, I'll go with the group, but that would cause me heartburn.
That causes John a little heartburn, but others? I mean, this will all go to the planning.
Right,
commission,
you're not,
and they may
but you're not.
Long way to go.
very differently,
Yeah.
so, okay.
Okay.
Seeing general consensus to move forward with 1,000 feet radius from those businesses amongst each other.
Okay.
All right, I hear some folks in favor of an additional limit on public facilities, examples, parks, maybe city buildings, library, things like that. I hear an appetite for an additional sort of limit on that. And I hear that 250 might be small to accomplish one of our goals, which would potentially be something as much of a kid magnet as Monmouth Recreation Park and skate park is. So do I does anyone have a thought about potentially increasing, to recommending moving forward with the limit on public community facilities and going to 500 feet, for example, or 750? Thoughts about those ranges?
The one thing I would point out, Chris mentioned some of the smaller parks, they're in residential areas, and so
I said
you can't locate around.
Everything.
Okay,
So,
I didn't catch you saying that.
750?
750.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm against any of that, and I will want to know what problem we're solving by doing that. And that'll be my query each time that comes up. But again, I'll go through
Probably
it.
just like the schools, right?
Same thing.
Which everybody can feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I'm with John Kerry on this one, on this proposal here.
For any limit on this particular location?
No,
or
for the item currently under discussion around public facilities, I'm trying to understand what that would be trying to achieve, and so the item under current discussion gives me a little heartburn.
Okay. Councilor Salinas Oliveros?
Yes, I'd like to hear again Councilor Oberst's take about where the skate park is. Is there because I heard you say something about you wouldn't want like a marijuana shop close to that. What would be your buffer or to see from that? I'm trying to get a sense of what's reasonable, what is going to, help us decide as far as where these cannabis shops are going to be if we're shooting for, the look of Monmouth or the downtown, or like, where are we going with this? Right. And then I'd like to do what Mayor Coons is saying. Let's come to some sort of agreement on these numbers, because I would be interested to hear from the planning committee and from the planning commission, their take, their ideas, and bring it back, because there's different expertise on that commission. So Councilor Oberst, I don't know if you could answer my question. I just want to hear from you, because I want to get a good sense of what you think of when you're talking about the skate park and the cannabis business.
When I think about the skate park and other park facilities in town, the skate park is somewhat unique in a mix of unsupervised adolescents and some users who are of the age of majority. And having a dispensary across the street might not be the most desirable situation. That said, if we wind up with a dispensary across the street, that will not give me an ending heartburn. I just think that there's a way around to finesse that, it would be good.
I think the other point was that if you look at that map, which the 250-foot public facility buffer, and you look at the big pink thing on the right-hand side, which is Ash Creek Station, that only part of it would apply
Right.
under the 250-foot buffer.
Right.
I think that's what he was talking about. I think maybe that was a question that the counselor also.
It would take a larger buffer around the skate park to cover all of the S-curve development. It looks like Rebecca has frozen.
Yeah.
No, because it's also covered by schools. Look at the school map in here. So if you had a 500 buffer at the skate park, you would cover that little spot right there, because the schools have the other areas.
You'd cover a little bit more of it, but still not a big old chunk of it.
Yeah.
All right, we lost counselors.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Mayor, maybe one idea, since we don't have the exact dimensions, we could leave, you don't have to necessarily make
Right.
that decision on
Right.
the amount tonight. We
Right.
could have the planning commission, like Counselor Salinas Olivera suggested, weigh in on
Yeah.
that. Here's one of the things you were looking at was the public facility spacing. Look at some maps, what's 500 feet do, what does 750 feet do? And then, I mean, that's not a hard policy language to write, to take in and take out. So I mean, we can just have it as an option.
Yeah, so the directive, I think, would be to consider zones of exclusion. The planning commission will have the detail. They also have a public hearing process. And so can come back to you with, you don't need to say 756 square feet. You can say, consider establishing zones of exclusion, let the planning commission sort of take that and come back to you with a recommendation.
I
Main
think,
Street,
what?
as you're developing your list of consensus, you haven't mentioned the Main Street district.
So that's, I was just gonna ask, so are there other very specifics that folks are interested in? And Main Street District specifically?
And yes, and for me, the commercial retail transition, which are those, if you're looking at that, that sort of west end of the downtown of the Main Street District are the red ones. So
I just need to do an update. Counselor Salinas Oliveros got bumped out. She's trying to get back in. So, sorry.
Yeah, Phyllis may have to let her in.
My computer.
Not sure.
sort of picked me up.
Okay, so have them also look at the Main Street District and commercial retail transitional. Anybody, does that give heartburn?
Would you say that again? Sorry. Counselor Salinas Oliveros was asking if the whole, everything crashed. So I was saying, no, we're still on. Would you mind repeating that? Sorry.
Well, I'm not sure we can text someone.
Oh, I just said the meeting is still on. No, that's all I did. Was that bad?
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, keep trying
We don't
to
want-
get in.
You
because-
can't relay to her.
No. It's just, I said, we're all still on. Chris is on. It's just talking about technology.
Okay. The, add for the consideration of the planning commission, limiting out of the Main Street District, which can be striped on our zoning map, and the commercial retail transition zone, which is fuchsia color.
it's the very bright red. And the only reason I suggest that is they're contiguous right there. And then they butt up against residential. So let's just, otherwise you would have those that could contribute to the downtown vibe that could be available. But if we prohibit it in those red sections there, that would just make a little more of a clean zone, Main Street District.
If you had if your park went to 500, it would cover that area. If you said the parks were 500 feet, that would cover just until the edge of that. And at the edge of it, you're outside that area where it's kind of the gathering place that I keep mentioning. You'd be on the fringe of it.
Right. My suggestion is that we just go ahead and do it now
Right.
and not mess with the arguing over a 500-foot buffer.
For those zones.
Yeah.
Add
for
it
just
in
those-
Because it
downtown.
might not be, right? 500 might still leave a
Tiny
tiny
bit.
corner of the Main Street District out and not, so we'd be fussing with 500, 750. If
Okay.
we
It's
say
just talking about Main
specifically
Street.
these two zones, out,
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I think I have.
think you have it?
Yeah, I think the hard thing is we don't have to make, we're not writing the code strictly from, this is giving us policy guidance. So
Yeah.
we'll have opportunity for some more discussion, like Lane said. Also through public hearing and testimony, we may hear additional concerns that we
Yeah.
would make further changes. So
Yeah.
I think this gives us some good guidance to just focus in on the spacing and the two zones with the Main Street District and the CR commercial retail transition zone, and looking at what some of the changes to the buffers around the public facilities and the parks will do. We can
Okay.
report on that.
You don't want 3 more ideas? Just to really make it clear.
Nothing's final, so like, you've got plenty of time to, yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you guys very much for
Nice
that.
maps, by the way.
I will let Liz know.
Yeah, it was
Liz,
very, very helpful. Tell them thank you.
Yeah, we'll do. We'll get them so we can protect them next.
Well done, y'all. Good conversation.
At this time, we have remaining a planned urban renewal agency meeting for a specific request, as well as a council executive session. So I would like to recess the council meeting Opportunity to call to order the Tuesday, March 1st meeting of the Monmouth Urban Renewal Agency and ask for a roll call, please, Phyllis. Oops. I didn't make sure she.
Maybe she's not back there yet. Nikki, are you remote?
I am. I went home just in case.
What I thought.
Would you like to take the?
Would you like me to do that?
Yeah, could you?
Sure, I can do that.
Mr. and Miss.
Yes, or yes. Let's see. Chair Coons,
Yes. Present.
Mr. Carey,
Here.
Ms. Belts,
I'm here.
Mr. Oberst,
I am here.
Ms. McKeel,
Here.
Ms. Salinas Oliveros,
Here.
and Mr. Lopez,
Here.
all present.
Great, thank you. At this,
Well done.
we do also have time for citizen comments, and don't believe we have any on the line. We have none in the room. We will certainly consider any that were sent in once our secretary recorder person returns. So at this time, we last held a meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency on January 4th, 2020. And those minutes are included as part of the consent calendar. If there are no additions or corrections, I would entertain a motion to accept those.
I would move approval of the January 4th, 2021 minutes.
21, no, 22. Actually, 22.
Well, on here it says 21. So 22 as correct.
Maybe that's a correction.
That is a correction.
That will be
That is-
correct.
that would be
in our
correct.
minutes. But
Nonetheless, I move approval with the correction.
thank you.
Second with correction.
Thank you, Ms. Belts, with those corrections. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Opposed? Okay, great, thank you. We have one business item this evening, and I think Suzanne Dupper is present us with that.
All right. Thank you, Chair. And yes, we do have on the agenda a request for a general assistance grant in the amount of $15,000. The request is made by the Monmouth Independence Chamber of Commerce and Visitor Center. It is to install a permanent freestanding sign at their current offices and locations located on Pacific Highway 99. There's a rendering of the sign in your packet, so you can see what that would look like. So it's a nice professional sign that has identification signage for the Chamber and the Visitor Center, Country Financial, future tenant, and then the lower portion of the sign would be an LED message board sign where information on community events, activities, emergencies can be posted there. So this would be placed in the kind of the front parking lot area of the chamber offices, and it has gone through the necessary planning commission approvals. It did request a little bit larger sign. Our sign code limits the size of signs based on their frontage. This is a very narrow parcel, so in order to have a sign that could accommodate this, they needed a small variance to the size, so that has been approved. There's an estimate of the sign cost that's included with the application. Approximately $38,000, and the request again is for $15,000, which is over a 50% match requirement as our grant requires. The remainder of the sign will be paid for by the chamber, business tenants, and other sign supporters such as Western Oregon University and possibly the City of Independence. The criteria for the urban renewal agency to consider for these grant requests is whether or not the grant request is consistent with our urban renewal goals and policies. And I highlighted the two on there in the report that this one is consistent with. So it promotes the redevelopment, sorry, volume's going kind of weird here. New development of properties in the commercial highway sub-area, and also helps increase business activity, employment opportunities in that commercial highway sub-area as well. So signage has been an ongoing issue that, and wayfinding in our community, particular, just helping people learn about events that are going on in the community, things that may be going on, Smith Fine Arts concerts on the campus or basketball games. So it's one of the things that our University Community Connections Committee and the Monmouth Business Association has also noted as important a need, especially given all the traffic that goes down Highway 99. It's one of our assets. So being able to have better visible signage and let people know what's going on in the community certainly has a benefit to us. So I think that's pretty much what I had prepared for the report, and you have some sample alternatives on there. You can approve the grant application request and approve it with conditions, or you can deny the application. There's a sample motion on there when you're ready for it. I believe we also have the Chamber of Commerce Director, Nikki Marizani, that's with us tonight in case you have questions about the application.
Thank you for bringing this forward. Again, as stated, a long-running request, both by the university and the city, to try and figure out something for signage and opportunity to share what's going on in our community. Questions for either Suzanne, or if for Nikki, that would not be inappropriate. I had a couple I noticed in the application. One is on the sign design, it says future tenant. What's the intention there? Is that if the office
Marijuana
space-
shop.
Not, I'm assuming that question was for me, Mayor. Yeah, not a marijuana shop. Definitely that the intention for that, and that rendering was made by a not me. And the idea would be to have the city's logo on there. And in that space would be if the university contributed and any other, and possibly the City of Independence, also their logos would be there. So it would be for the lifetime of the sign.
So it would be a fixed thing for the sponsors potentially, rather
Yes.
than.
Yeah, I want to definitely acknowledge those that help get it, and then also bring notice that, you know, that the chamber does represent everybody in our area, and make that a permanent fixture on there.
Thanks. My other question, also probably Nikki for you, the discrepancy between the application that is requesting $15,000, which appears to be a third of the stated expense of $45,000, and then the actual bid coming in at $38,000 and change. What can you please explain that discrepancy?
I can. So the price of the sign has already gone up once. I started my position in June and saw a need for the sign my first day of work because I passed my driveway twice. So, and then in talking to everybody and how everybody wanted to get the word out. So the price is going up the longer it takes for me to raise the funds. But we're hoping to have enough left to put a casing around the pole so it's more pleasing to the eye. So if we had those funds, that's where that would go.
And then I know the answer to this, but for everyone else, what commitments have we secured from Western and Independence to pay that additional sort of third?
So I think it's a matter of the first person doing it. And I think from Western, they've said, we want to do it. We just have to figure out which pots it's coming from and put it together for you. And Independence, they've discussed it I believe it's come up at a city council meeting as well as amongst staff. And it seems very promising that they will be in it. But I think it's just a matter of, determining that it's okay that we're in Monmouth and Independence can have their logo on the sign. So I'm trying to answer all their questions and get them excited about it.
And if one of those other funding partners, say the final cost really is the 45 and the university throws in 15, but Independence chooses not to, or the university can only come up with 5 and Independence, what's the fate of the sign? Is it a go, no-go situation, or is it a continued fundraising situation?
No, I think we would continue fundraising. I think the need for the sign is so needed that we'll find a way to make it happen. I never say no, I say yes if. So I think that that if we had a couple strong supporters, I think we could come up with the difference. And if I have to wear a costume and stand out on the corner, I will do that. So I think it's super important for the community. And I think not only letting everybody know what events are happening, when school registrations are, when the football games are, but also as an emergency response should we need it. If there's flooding, accidents, Amber Alerts, etc., those can go up there too. It's pretty amazing what they do with technology now and how I can change it from my phone anywhere in the world at a moment's notice for that sign. So I think that the potential to go to other donors is there. It just happened to be that the two cities and the college made the most sense to me off the bat because you're the ones that need it most. Yeah.
Okay. Councilor Opers?
This is for Suzanne. Suzanne, we had an outright ban on LED reader board signs. And then when Walgreens proposed coming in at the intersection of Main and 99, they basically said, we have to have an LED reader board sign. We put in an ability for them to do that with a restriction on how fast it could change. I want to say that restriction came out very nebulous, like just as long as it doesn't change too fast. And I look at standing and looking this weekend at the MyNet sign and the Roth sign, and the Roth sign is changing about 1.5 times for every 1 time MyNet sign changes. And I'm wondering, do we have a standard for how fast the messages turn over? What is the standard? Does it need to be more concrete, etc.?
Yeah, we definitely do have a standard for how long it has to stay static. I don't know what that standard is off the top of my head. I didn't bring my sign code with me, so I can get back to you with that.
Right.
I think just because I had to change the frequency of Monmouth Elementary LED sign, I was trying to remember as well, but I can't. But the other consideration, because again, I know because of the Central High School LED sign, because ODOT has its own standard of frequency of message and number of characters and lines. So that's going to probably be stricter, if I recall, than our sign code.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Yes, Councilor Carey.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to frame the conversation by moving to approve the general assistance grant application for $15,000 for the Monmouth Independence Chamber of Commerce located at 355 Pacific Avenue North.
I would second.
Thank you, Councilor Carey, Mr. Carey for the motion and Mr. Obers for the second. And obviously, as a former chamber board member myself, we've worked on this for a long time. It's certainly welcome. And I think the only other thing that might have caused a little bit of a, if folks read through that, the chamber's property is currently leased through March of 2023. So by the time we get this sign up and that lease is coming due. Obviously, the chamber's been there for some time. Do we have any reason to have a concern about whether or not the chamber would then be relocating after 1 year from
Actually, that was my very question. Will the chamber be staying in that location? And my concern is by putting in a $45,000 sign, the owner of that facility can say to the chamber, you have to pay more rent. We've got a good sign for you now. So, and I know this came up like a year ago with another business, and Mr. Shetterly, I think you said it's, the cow has left the barn and there's nothing to rewrite how we do these $15,000 grants. But I'm concerned with providing money that can be turned around into a profit by a landowner who is not the person who's actually trying to use this.
Well, I guess the real question is, do we have a standard or criteria for a grant that has to be the owner that applies?
The owner needs to consent. Yeah, so we do have that with the application.
Yeah,
Property owner
so
consent
I
form.
guess I would say the application meets those criteria, and the rest of it is interesting, but it's not a basis on which to make the decision, I think.
Yeah, but I think I guess I would just, I don't know, I probably wouldn't be on the council by the time this comes up again, but I would say it'd be nice to have this, like, just because you got a $38,000 sign, you can't turn around in a year and raise the rent, because it kind of defeats what we're also trying to do. We're just giving somebody $15,000 so they can increase their rent. I don't think that's what we do with taxpayer money. But anyway, it has nothing to do with this conversation. I just want to put that there for future.
It looks like our chamber director has a comment.
Yeah, I want to maybe ease your mind a little bit. Our owner is a business owner in Monmouth, and this property is an investment for him. And should he ever want to sell it, the chamber would look into possibly, and in fact, we very well may be looking into the possibility of purchasing that building at some point when we can, or if there's grants available and things like that. So it is something we are exploring, but this particular owner is happy to have us there and probably happy if we never leave either.
Okay. Thank you.
But it does beg the question, who owns the sign?
Thank you, John.
The landowner does.
It would become part of the property, that's right.
Fixed permanent sign.
So back to my question, if,
Because it's-
Yeah, it's attached.
back to my question is, we've just increased the value of the property using tax dollars.
which is what the Urban Renewal Agency does, Karen. We increase the value of properties for the reasons that Suzanne stated, for economic development, for job growth, for blah, blah. So that,
And I agree with that.
had the owner come to us and asked for a sign and offered an LED message, I think we'd be looking at the same thing. It's a desirable spot on Highway 99, and as long as there's some guarantee that that sign will continue to promote city events and activities, I think that's what we're here for. When we wear our Urban Renewal Agency.
Thank you.
Pretty good investment if our partners pop up.
I just have a kind of, just a question to Ms. Duffner. Did we ever get a letter out to all the businesses in the urban development zone to say, hey, we've got this grant money?
The plan is to, now that we have some additional ARPA business recovery funds, to look at retooling that. So the short answer to your question is no, we haven't, just because I think we're trying to reposition that and leverage it with some of the funds that we've gotten through.
Okay.
ARPA. So stay tuned. I know it's not happening fast enough, but we will. Yeah, we sure.
I'm just worried that people in the know to apply,
Okay,
where not all business owners do.
great. We have a motion on the floor, so I'm gonna redirect to that. Are there any additional questions or discussion? All right. All in favor of the motion to extend $15,000 for the purchase of this sign, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed?
I abstain
And you abstain?
since I am the vice president of the chamber board and I may at some point be in, I also am responsible for fundraising for the chamber. And so if that were to come to pass, I don't want there to be any conflict.
Yeah, excuse me. It's not a conflict because you're non-compensated, I assume.
Correct.
Volunteer, charitable organization, 501c4, I assume, but that's fine, you can abstain.
You can, but you wouldn't have been required
Right.
to because you wouldn't personally
That's correct.
benefit from this. Unless you are Mrs. Kaufman and you're going to be able to raise the rent.
But you-
Additionally, because I will have products for sale in the chamber visitor center, I will physically profit from that. I will profit from that. So just to be safe.
All right. Excellent. All right. So I believe our assistant secretary will announce that the motion passed.
The motion passed unanimously.
All right. And at this point, I would entertain a
One
motion.
abstention.
With one abstention.
Thank you, Nikki, for staying.
Thank you, guys.
We adjourn the urban renewal agency meeting and return to regular session.
All right, all in favor, please, of adjourning the Urban Renewal Agency meeting, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, we're adjourned. And at this point, as it's nearing 9:25, before we consider executive session, just check with Marty and make sure everyone's okay with the amount of time this is intended to take.
Our expectation is, our hope is that this executive session won't take more than 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Are we okay with proceeding?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Let me announce that the city council is back in session to meet in executive session for the purpose of discussing labor negotiator consultations. This is held pursuant.
This
to
conference
ORS
is no longer being recorded.